So
Yeah,
go for it. Do
everyone,
your
Steve
intro.
Sievers from Bionic Buzz, or I should say, Dr. Steve Sievers. Here with Nick from Bayside and my special co-host, DJ Rossstar.
Hey,
Nick,
hey.
I should
big
have
fan,
warmed.
not just your music, but your podcast. I guess talk about how you joined Adam and Will and
Yeah,
became
yeah.
a member of Thank the Maker.
Well, the quick story was they started the podcast, Thank the Maker, and me and Ryan from Yellowcard have the same manager. So Kristen, our manager, hit us up or hit me up and was just like, hey, Ryan from Yellowcard has a Star Wars podcast and wanted to have you on as a guest. So I was on as a guest pretty early on in the podcast. They came to my house. At the time, Ryan lived here in California and they had just gone to Galaxy's Edge. So they came to my house. We did an episode covering the movie Solo. And like the next day or the next morning or something, they both were like, hey, that was really awesome. Do you want to just like host the podcast with us? So I feel like another couple of weeks passed before I was like officially a host. Probably like 2 months passed. And then, yeah, I think April of 2020, it's kind of weird how it all sort of happened. Like they were here probably a month before COVID hit and did the podcast kind of live. And then by April, I was just a regular host, and it gave me something to do then during the pandemic. And I mean, podcasting in general, I think gave a lot of people not only something to do during the pandemic, but something to listen to and like kind of get community, you know, like to hear people talk because you're stuck in your house basically all the time. So it worked out. And yeah, we've got our own little niche for sure between, I mean, the way it started was obviously based around like we're all musicians and we like Star Wars, but then it kind of just morphed into a Star Wars podcast, you know, like we don't really lean on the fact that we're musicians too much anymore.
Very cool. Yeah, I've interviewed William and Adam, and now finally you. So the trilogy is now complete.
Yeah.
And you guys are hosting a San Diego Comic-Con Mosh Eisley after party. When I talked to William about when you guys were doing the Star Wars Celebration after party, basically he said it was like Emo Night for Star Wars. I guess you can elaborate on that and what people can expect for this party.
Yeah, well, the to go way back to the beginning of the idea. So Star Wars Celebration 2019 was in Chicago. And my buddy Alex Backus at the time had a podcast called Black Series Rebels with his friend Steve. And I was buddies with them. I'd been on their YouTube show a couple of times. And they also made like really cool enamel pins for characters in Star Wars. And during Celebration, they were doing meetups for their YouTube show and were giving out pins and stuff. And they made one of the meetups at Beauty Bar in Chicago on the Sunday night of Celebration, while I was DJing an Emo Night there. So I was like, why don't we combine this to be like a Star Wars Celebration after party? So it was like a low-key Emo Night. It wasn't what has now become like an Emo Night performance where there's a stage and there's almost like a, you know, you're DJing, yes, but it's almost more like a show than it is hanging out in a bar listening to emo music. So that night was fairly chill. And once Thank the Maker became a thing and we kind of created a network with 2 other podcasts, or really 3 other podcasts between Armor Party, Princess and Scoundrel, and the Dano Channel, we combined to become a network. And when Star Wars Celebration was here last year in Anaheim, I was like, hey, why don't we try to do an after party? You know, like Chain Reaction, which is legendary venue here in Southern California. They would have us in a second. It's only 400 tickets. There's going to be tens of thousands of people at Star Wars Celebration. Chain Reaction is 2 miles from Star Wars Celebration. We have to be able to find 400 emo kids who are going to Celebration who want to like dress up and cosplay and listen to emo music. So that first one sold out in under 10 days, I would say. We sold like, I forget if it's 400 or 450 tickets almost immediately. And, you know, we knew it was a good idea. People were super excited about it. And ever since then, we've just, you know, kind of gone really pro with it. We've like made it an LLC and have a merch store. And we've done, we did one during When We Were Young festival, which was Halloween weekend in Vegas, and that one did even better, like 650 tickets. And we've been on the radar of just about everyone you could think of, like from Hot Topic to Roosevelt's was one of our sponsors at one point. Yeah, I mean, LA Galaxy, a soccer team, we did a real mini Mosh Eisley during their Star Wars night on May 6th. So we've gotten some good notoriety from it.
For that too, and dressed up. That was awesome.
Yeah. So it's fun, you know. It's what you expect from an emo night if you've been to Emo Night Brooklyn or like the LA version. But we just ask people to bring lightsabers and cosplay, and it's fun.
The one photos I saw was like Black Parade outfits, but with
yeah.
Gone. Well, that was cool. Good mix.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think you might like Star Wars more than music now, Nick. It seems like this is now your number one passion.
I have room for it all. You know, I still do. Besides the Star Wars podcast, I do a new music podcast on Spotify, also called the Radio Show. So it's, you know, like I'm so grateful that I get to have a life playing music, and Bayside put in so much time over the last, 23 and a half years that we've earned our spot right now where the tables have almost flipped. From 10-15 years ago, we would be gone 8 months a year and make no money, and now we're home 8 months a year and have a career and make plenty of money in the 2 or 3 months that we like work, so I'm grateful for it. I think part of the payment for having a career, besides financial, besides actually getting paid, is having time off, and freedom to live life and do things like, whether it's 2 podcasts or me and Chris from Bayside have a coffee roasting company. Like, I get to do all these things that don't have that I enjoy, first of all, and I don't necessarily have to have a lot of financial pressure on them to make me money, because Bayside makes me money. So these things that are creative get to kind of live in this like financially free area where like the coffee company or Mosh Eisley or Thank the Maker, it makes me a little bit of money, but it doesn't need to make me enough money to like afford rent, so there are things that could kind of live freely and grow organically, as opposed to having pressure to keep the lights on. So it's cool. I'm going to be 43 in like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's great
Wow.
to be able to like spend my time doing things that I like.
Do Chris, Jack, and Anthony, I'm not going to say love Star Wars as much as you, but do they like it enough where you can talk to them about it, or are they just sick of hearing about it from you?
No, I would say if there's anything over the years that like they know more about because I like it, it's probably hockey. But Star Wars, I think, is something very casual. Like, Anthony's definitely more of a Marvel person. Chris is more into horror. Jack would probably be the one that I could talk to most about it. But I think in general, like, they all just kind of absorb my fandom to a certain extent, whether it's hockey or Star Wars or whatever.
I'm going to ask you this, and Steve, actually. So I didn't watch any Star Wars movies or anything until I was an adult. I'm being honest. Like, it was not even like 5 years ago. You guys grew up with everything, so you have a different sort of attachment. Yeah. And usually when you get older, you start to admit certain things weren't that great. Like, I'll be the first to say I didn't like the last Green Day record. Is there anything Star Wars related that you guys don't love, that you aren't super happy with?
2 movies, Battle of Endor 1 and 2. For those who don't know, it was 2 Ewok movies that were made in the late 80s.
For TV, right?
Yeah, for TV. I mean, it was fun because it was new Star Wars content at the time. But looking back on it, it was like, okay.
Yeah.
But everything else, actually, besides The Last Jedi, I love.
Yeah, I think it's the new. I feel like it has less to do with Star Wars being good or bad, and more about how people are because of the internet and because of Twitter and stuff like that. Like, you just mentioned The Last Jedi. That everything was kind of fine and dandy with Disney bringing back Star Wars and rebooting the franchise until The Last Jedi, and like it just split forever. It's never going to be a united fandom ever again. That movie really broke a lot of people's brains, and like I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. I think that the timing of when it came out was just wrong. I don't think that people for basically the third movie Disney did were ready to handle stuff that happened in that movie. And then you add internet culture and Twitter culture of haters getting more likes if they're negative, you know, like that just feeds the algorithm. So The Last Jedi still gets talked about.
Yeah, and I'm kind of tired of talking about it, even though it gets
engagement to this day, and the movie's 5, 6, 7 years old at this point, so it's still a heated conversation that you could get engagement out of on Twitter and YouTube and all this stuff.
Overall, I feel like Disney's done more positive than bad, you know. I loved Force Awakens. Rogue One was amazing. Jeez.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think there's too much though? Like, are there too many shows and movies? You're okay with it?
I wish there was more. Honestly.
Yeah, I want more. Exactly. The thing
is there's more video games too. There used to be a ton of Star Wars video games. Now it's kind of really dropped off. We barely get anything now.
Yeah, the way I look at it, it's really weird because I feel like Disney has owned Lucasfilm and Star Wars for maybe coming up on a decade, if not a decade. And the sequel trilogy was fine, but their real hit is Grogu and The Mandalorian. So I think that really kind of switched their focus. I think the sequel trilogy did fine. I think all of those movies grossed over $1 billion. Everything was fine. Again, the fandom kind of split, but I think for the most part, The Mandalorian and Grogu became like the hit, the new characters, the hit show, all this stuff. So I think that they're now, again, even like a decade into owning Lucasfilm, I think they're readjusting to be like, well, here's Grogu's our hit. We still have Rey and Finn and Poe and all these new characters that we created, but Grogu is the hit, so let's go in that direction. So I think that the good thing is, and the different thing than like Lord of the Rings or Marvel or anything, is like Star Wars isn't written, so they can change course and rewrite and make things fit where, Lord of the Rings is a book. You can't really stray too far from that. So I don't know, we'll see. I think I still think even a decade in, they're still readjusting what to do with Star Wars.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, let's talk about the Punk Rock Museum. You just were one of the guided tours there, I think, was last week or something like that?
Yeah, a couple days ago, Saturday, yeah.
What is it like? I'm dying to go at some point, you know?
It's cool. You guys, Ross, especially Green Day stuff, like, oh my God, man. They did such a good job with it, like being involved, I'll put it this way. All of us here, I guess, probably came into our own listening to and discovering punk rock when we were teenagers. And, a lot of people did back then. And then a lot of people kind of, fall back to the median of just being a normal person that's just how things worked. I've been in bands, like you guys are in media and still listen to all this stuff. So a lot of people who became punk rockers for a lack of a better term, it kind of shapes how you view the world. So when you get to the museum and you get to watch, basically, you walk through a timeline of everything leading up to Green Day. I'll just use Green Day as like the anchor here. You get to walk through Ramones and The Clash and all this stuff leading up to 94, 93. And then you get to the Green Day part where punk exploded, and then everything after that is what we all experienced. Yeah. So you get to see what came before, you get to see how it happened, and then they did such a good job because it keeps going through. When you get upstairs, it gets to Warped Tour, it gets to, emo, it gets to like they have a Pierce the Veil guitar in there. It is very much so something I try to the idea I try to put forward with my radio show is that all of this stuff is connected, and they're, a screamo band and Green Day and I don't know, Frank Turner, they're all under the same umbrella of punk rock, and it all has to do more with an ethos and a way to think more than does a sound. So you don't want, after Green Day came out, I don't want to hear 20 bands that sound like Green Day. We'd have a Green Day, So I want other types of music under the same, almost mindset of punk rock. And I think that's what they did great with the museum, is that when you do go upstairs, there's Taking Back Sunday stuff and The Used and Masked Intruder and Bayside. So you get to see how, my point with the tour And I hope I get to do some I really plan to do more in the future. My point with the tour is to not only like talk about Bayside and the bands in the museum that influenced Bayside or me in particular. My biggest point is that like you don't have Turnstile right now without the Ramones in 1977. You know, like they sound nothing alike, but life and punk rock and music is a journey. So you don't get to, without the success of the Ramones or Green Day, you don't get to have Turnstile, you know? So it's like, no, they'd sound nothing alike, but they all deserve to be in this museum, and you have to kind of be appreciative of your past, which is the Clash and the Ramones and the Misfits and all this stuff.
I mean, sounds good to me, dude. The only punk rock museum I've ever been to is in Iceland. They have their own little punk rock museum.
That subway, right? Yeah.
Oh, you know what that is, right?
Yeah, I've been there.
Exactly.
That's
so
cool.
Steve and I are
Very diverse in there.
Yeah, we're gonna take a trip out there, Steve. Go back to Vegas for the first time in like a long time.
Yeah, you'll love it. Are you going for when we were young?
October or
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do I want to see everybody play for 20 minutes? Who knows? We'll see how I feel when it gets closer. Well, yeah, we know what they're gonna play. We'll see how I feel when it gets closer to October.
Yeah. The museum though it's so well done, and you know it's more than a museum. There's a tattoo shop in there. There's a bar.
Oh yeah, and we saw that you did the Elder Emo Night.
Yeah, DJ there that night. It's great. You know, like it's something that really like kind of validates everything that we like. You know, it deserves to be a thing, and it's better than having like a section in the Rock and Roll Museum in Cleveland. This is an entire like 2-floor, just real great walk through history, which is, it's amazing.
And I'm surprised because, you know, some people are like, the definition of what a band is punk rock or not, but it's cool you said you have Take It Back Sunday to bands that might not fit quote punk rock, but still how they influence the punk rock.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, you know, like
close enough.
Taking Back Sunday can't exist unless, you know, all those dudes were listening to NoFX in 93 and 94, you know? It's like, it's just a process. It's progress, you know? And it's like anyone who's just going to be like, this band's not punk rock or blah, blah, blah. It's just like, dude, punk rock is about like inclusiveness and not being closed-minded. So just shut up. You're wrong.
Well, before we go, I guess let's talk about Bayside really quick. You're doing some East Coast shows.
Yeah.
That's fun for you to go back to your roots on the East Coast for a little bit. Yeah,
it's rad. I mean, we played 2 New York shows on the last tour, but they were both in the city. So we're playing actual Long Island this time. And nice. I mean, the cool thing for the last 2 years is, I guess the older we get, and I joke that we're becoming classic rock. The entire scene is becoming classic rock because it is, but like we don't have to be, you know, like we don't have to be shitty like, you know, Motley Crue, you know, like we're doing our own thing the older we get. And I think a lot of people, again, you know, you find music when you're a kid, you go to college, you maybe get married, get a house, have kids, and then when everything settles down and you're like mid to late 30s, you're like, oh, I guess I could have fun again. What do I enjoy in life? And you're like, well, let me go see some bands that I used to like. So I think a lot of people are coming back into the fold. Bayside's like a little bit of an outlier because we've never gone away. We never had a hit record 20 years ago, you know, like we've just kind of always been around. So we're like an outlier to this like emo revival thing, but we're also of that era. So we're attached. And the cool thing is Hawthorne Heights, branded a festival called Is for Lovers, and they're doing them all over the country. They did a couple last year. They're doing way more this year, and they include us in most of the shows. So we have 7 of those festivals between, we did one in April in Hawaii. We did one 2 weeks ago in Tahoe. And then this next tour that you're talking about, we're doing one in North Carolina, Outer Banks, and we just decided that week to kind of make a week of shows. We're doing 4 headliners in Long Island, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, and Cleveland, and we're also playing the Bouncing Souls Stoked for Summer Festival. So we have like 6 shows over the course of a week or something like that, all back east. So it's great. And then August we have 2 more of those Is for Lovers festivals in Iowa and here in California, actually, and then September, a couple more headliners. A Nashville Is for Lovers Festival and Riot Fest, where we're playing with the Foo Fighters and Turnstile, which is great.
Well, I'm glad you're still doing it, dude, because there's like, you know, less than 10 bands I like that are probably still doing it. So I'm happy.
No, we're good. The music scene is great. The kids are doing great. You know, like there's plenty of young, awesome bands out there that are, you know, carrying the torch. And you look at a lineup for When We Were Young or Is for Lovers. I mean, a lot of these bands are either getting back together to do things or are still together, like Bayside. And we just had one of the best years we've ever had because of new music, because of new Bayside music. We released 6 new songs in from mid 2022 to mid 2023, and our fans love them, and it kind of just gave us, you know, more fuel to keep going, which I think is rare. You know, like I can't tell you other fan bases of bands who support their favorite band's new music the way Bayside fans do. It's a great thing.
Well, I don't see you stopping anytime soon, Nick, unless you become an actor and start doing Star Wars shows and movies instead. So
we'll see. I'll squeeze it in if I have.
Cool.
Hey,
Steve, before we go.
Yeah, I just want to plug the Mosh Eisley San Diego is July 21st at the Music Box San Diego. It's not too far from the convention center. You can get tickets at musicboxsd.com. And I assume you're going to be there, but I guess is William's on tour.
We're all kind of on tour, and we're going to make whatever we can work out. I know Adam for sure will be there, and I have a show in Pennsylvania that night, so I'm definitely not going to be there. Okay. I'm getting screwed out of that.
Gotcha.
But Adam will be there. I'm not sure about William Ryan Key yet, but yeah, I'm very enraged about how that went down, because I kind of I was at the forefront of wanting to do Mosh Eisley at San Diego Comic-Con, and then Bayside wound up having shows, and you know, I can't put like a side project before Bayside, you know. It's just not how
maybe they can zoom you in like during the I'll be there in a sense. I'll just say that. I don't want to spoil anything.
Feel like a Force Ghost thing, you know?
Yeah. Something will happen. I promise you will see me there in some sense.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's talk about with new music that comes out and
whenever you're ready for the next Bayside record, let's talk.
Yeah, I think we'll have new music early next year, I would say, around there. Yeah.
Okay, we're ready.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you, buddy. You too, Ross, even though you've only kind of seen Star Wars.